Hello everybody, MegaZardX here, back at it again to give y'all another very exciting video. And heading into the month of June where we get a whole bunch of gaming news and reveals and announcements and stuff like that, we know for Nintendo, at least as it stands now at the time of this recording, for the second half of 2024 and beyond, so July onward, we only know of one game that Nintendo happened to announce, and that is the Nintendo World Championships, the NES edition. Now, as the rest of the second half of the year goes, we don't know what is going to be scheduled out there, though, but I do have an inkling of a feeling of what we could be getting, and that is remakes and remasters, because you got to fill out the rest of this year with something easy, quick to get out the door, though, but not necessarily your big main ship titles such as like a new 3D Mario or a new big old 3D Zelda. Like those aren't going to likely to happen. So that got me to think and wonder, how many games has Nintendo gone through and either remade or remastered? Not necessarily ports, we're going to exclude those for the sake of this video though, but remakes and remasters. What has Nintendo's strategy been for the whole entire life cycle for the Nintendo Switch though? So I just want to kind of give my thoughts on this though, and that's just going to be the first half of the video. And in the second half of the video, I wanted to go through and actually tier rank list all of the remakes and remasters that we had gotten on the Nintendo Switch up until this point. Unfortunately, Luigi's Mansion 2 will not be included as of the recording of this video because the game has not launched as of this moment though. But that's going to basically be the main gist for this video though, and I will leave timestamps down below in the description box down below. That way you don't miss either one of the halves that might have piqued your curiosity though. But that's going to basically be the topics for this video though. So if you really like this, make sure you're going to hit that like button, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and that bell to stay up to date on all things video game related I feel like talking about and discussing. But without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump straight up into this video. So Nintendo remakes and remasters. Now, when I was going through and trying to figure out exactly how many of them are there, excluding the ports, because yes, there are several different ports, like the Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze and stuff like that. Obviously, Breath of the Wild, some people might consider that, even though that was like day one on Wii U and the Nintendo Switch, though. Yes, there was a good handful of ports, though. But in terms of remakes and remasters, where Nintendo has to go in and either remake the game up from the ground up for remakes, or happen to, go through and mess with the game's assets, or, changing some of the textures and stuff within the game, such as like Metroid Prime Remaster. Those are the games I really wanted to go through and just talk about real quick though. And in this list, I managed to get about 15 different titles though, and believe it or not, the first remake or remaster we managed to get on the Nintendo Switch was Link's Awakening. That's kind of crazy to think. Way back in 2019, it did take a couple of years before we got our first official remake though. But yeah, we all remember how that game looked, and it was drastically different in terms of the art style direction and stuff that we got within that toy aspect kind of feel within this remake, in comparison to if you look back at the original Game Boy Color release for it though, with the DX version, or you can look back at one of the other original Game Boy games though. Drastically different art style between these two though. But here recently, even with the release of Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door, I noticed, at least with the naming conventions with a lot of these different games, that Nintendo isn't necessarily slapping the term remake or remaster on a whole bunch of their different titles. Yes, there are some exceptions like Metroid Prime Remaster though, but with a lot of the games, such as like Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door or Mario versus Donkey Kong, they don't necessarily have the term remake in it. Yes, you can go through and pull up the game up on their website, and yes, they are going to make references to how this was originally a Game Boy game or originally a GameCube game or whatever the game happens to be though. They keep their naming conventions fairly simple, and it kind of made me start to think, like, why did they not just call it something like a Final Fantasy VII remake, or like how we see with other different third-party games, stuff from Square Enix or Capcom, the Resident Evil 2 remakes, all that kind of stuff though. But the more and more I sat down and thought about it, I was like, wait a minute. For a lot of us gamers out there, at least the people that happen to grow up on the 64, the GameCube, or should I dare even say like the NES or the Super Nintendo and stuff, yes, we all know that these games are either, remakes or remasters of these really old but yet great classic games though. But for a lot of people out there, people are younger and are starting to get into gaming nowadays though, I hadn't necessarily owned up or grown up with all of those different retro consoles leading up into this point though, to the fact that where that's one of the main reasons why not even just Nintendo, but just, gaming companies in general, are leaning so heavily into the remakes and remasters versus just going through and making brand new games because of the fact that how, all of the groundwork's laid out in front of you. It's really easy to actually go back and either give some little touch up paint and stuff like that and modernize these games for modern hardware versus, starting with a brand new game from the ground up. Should I dare say even a brand new IP? Because a lot of these companies nowadays are more so risk adverse. Like they don't want to take too many risks now because we know how big these ballooning budgets are for the cost of these games, though. Like it's getting freaking insane out there, though. So a lot of these companies are definitely playing it safe. I do miss that era around the sixth gen where you had like GameCube, PS2, in the Xbox 360 era, where these companies were willing to take more risks because of the fact that how if a game flopped, it weren't necessarily gonna, break the bank or nothing like that, though. So I do kind of miss those days, though. But the fact that they can tap into a whole nother marketplace for younger gamers that hadn't grown up with these games, hey, you know what? That's just quick and easy money. So they don't necessarily have to, put the term remake or remaster and heavily lean into that because of the fact that there's so many other newer gamers out there. For a lot of people, this is just as good as a brand new game and stuff like that. Even if we look back to like the Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door, obviously it seems like Nintendo's playing a little bit of, testing out the waters and stuff. Like we had the release of Super Mario RPG, and to have a well-known, beloved classic with Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door within like the span of a year, though, I'm like, that's truly saying something. So maybe we'll kind of get a switch up within the Nintendo formula and actually go back to our original roots on the Paper Mario series. So overall, I believe we're going to get more remakes and more remasters, not even just from Nintendo alone, but definitely within the gaming industry overall as a whole, because it's just so quick, super easy to get out, and we just have to understand that there's a lot of new gamers rising up, those that happen to be like 10 to 12, maybe as low as like 7 or 6, that happen to be growing up now that just don't have that knowledge or that recollection of all these other older retro systems, though. It's just super easy for them to put out and also to test the waters for newer introductions for games in set series, though. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind, though. But yeah, don't know. I just wanted to kind of just think about out loud with remakes and remasters and stuff. Like I know we're going to probably get a few of them coming out within the second half of this year. Maybe we'll get a Fire Emblem Genealogy of Holy War remake or something like that, though. Or maybe they'll do something cool within the Donkey Kong series or something like that. Hopefully some things I would love to see in that recent Nintendo Direct that should be coming out in the month of June, though. But that's all I have, at least for the first half of the video. Now let's go ahead and jump over and let's go ahead and tier rank all these different games. All right, so I have the tier list brought up in front of me of all the games that we managed to get remakes and remasters for, obviously excluding all the ports. So as you can see down here, everything I got in this category, remakes and remaster, these are the games we're ranking. I pulled this from some other list off of tier ranker where it has all the other Switch games below, but we're not touching all of these down there. So here we go. So the very first one was Link's Awakening. Remember that came out in 2019. Obviously there's like that, that toy-like style that's up in this game that's actually really nice. There were a little bit of, some graphical, or I wouldn't say graphical, but, more so like performance issues that were in the game, especially when you got around that toxic force or something like that. I don't know. You started to manage to drop some frames around that area, though. So there was a little bit of some performance issues up in here, but outside of that, it was a very simple, straightforward remake for that one, though. And I think those Game Boy Color games, or Game Boy in general, when they do make remakes of those, honestly, those can come out looking really nice, though. So visually, I like it, but the performance is going to hold it back, so it can't be S, and I don't think I'm going to put it in A, but I'll put it somewhere right around B. I think it's pretty solid right there. Next up, we had the Mystery Dungeon games. Now, remember, this is based upon the original Red and Blue games that, what was it, like Red was on the GBA and Blue was on the Nintendo DS. Like, we were kind of in between those two different systems at that time, so you chose whatever version you wanted to play based on what system you happen to have at the time now. So this basically took all the aspects of those games, combined them within the DS category. I mean, yes, in terms of like the Mystery Dungeon games, I would definitely say this version, along with the later iteration with the ones with Mystery Dungeon Explorers of Darkness, Time, and Sky. I think those are some of the best mystery dungeon games out there, though. But overall, if you love yourself some mystery dungeon, I think it's pretty straightforward. It looks visually, it looks good. I don't think there's nothing wrong with it though. So I'll probably put it in the B tier, just like right behind that. Just very original to the source material. Didn't hear a lot of controversy online, so very straightforward though. Next up, we had the 3D All-Star Collection. Obviously, now these are some remasters of the original Mario 64. Then you also had, Mario Sunshine as well as Mario Galaxy. Now, interestingly enough, at least with this one though, I had not played Sunshine or Galaxy, so it was actually nice to actually go through and play those games. But to no shocker, no surprise, I can understand the reason why people did not like Sunshine though, because it's definitely at the bottom of the list in terms of games I personally like from the Mario series though. But nonetheless though, 64 and Galaxy, great, phenomenal games though. I like the fact that they managed to add in, widescreen support for Sunshine and stuff, and then obviously Galaxy just managed to get that HD treatment as well. I would have loved to see an widescreen version for Mario 64, but they did not do that. They didn't, mess upon anything with the controls and stuff. So at least for that, I'll probably just stick it straight up into the A category, like really solid and stuff like that. I mean, I like the fact they added in extra music and stuff like that, but if they would have just went a little bit of extra miles, then they might have managed to get up in the S tier. Next up, you had Miitopia. Now, this was the start of us getting some 3DS remasters or remakes brought over to the Nintendo Switch. So hopefully we get to see more of these come out though. Obviously, this is like one of those games that came out on the tail end of the 3DS's life cycle, and then obviously with the original that was, and then they brought it over here to the Nintendo Switch though. So honestly, it was really good. It seems pretty solid though, but I mean, I felt like it was kind of, it was out there. People kind of talked about it a little bit, and then it was just kind of forgotten after. I don't know. I feel like this game came out in the month of May or something like that, like, almost around summertime or so. And then I don't know, the conversation for it just kind of fell off real quick though. But I mean, visually speaking, it doesn't look bad, but I just don't think it kind of moved any waves or anything like that. So I'll just stick it in the C tier. It's not necessarily a bad game, but I mean, it just didn't make any splashes. Next up, you had Skyward Sword HD. Now, this one right here, this one managed to do quite a bit of interesting stuff because, everybody used to play this game, obviously, with motion control and stuff like that, originally with the Nintendo Wii. However, with this game, they did manage to make it where sticks and buttons was actually a viable way to play this game as well though. So they did manage to fix the game for those that for some reason couldn't get good enough to actually play it with motion with the Wii, but I digress though. So the incorporation of all of that, the matter of fact that it's actually within HD now as well, and they added some stuff, that some modern conveniences with that Skyward Sword amiibo. But some people were kind of, I don't know, they were in the tizzy like, why would you put a quality of life feature behind that amiibo? I mean, yeah, you really probably shouldn't though, but it's not necessarily required to play the game. But I digress though. But overall, I really love this game. Originally, when it came out on the Wii, I did manage to pick it up again, so I'm gonna put it up there in the S tier because the fact that they managed to make the game work with non-motion, opening up to a whole new audience of people though. So for that fact alone, I really do love that game. Next up, you have Mario Party Superstars. So it's a little bit interesting because, well, I guess it's not like a mainline series Mario Party game. It is, however, the fact that you're able to go through and have there's remaster maps from the original Mario Party 1, 2, and 3 games, along with the mini games are associated within that Nintendo 64 era. But not just that, you had it within the GameCube era as well, though, in terms of those different mini games and stuff like that. And then obviously they managed to add some new stuff where you're able to actually, get some history in terms of like the Mario Party series and stuff based upon the characters, the maps and stuff like that, even messing around in terms of like the music gallery as well though. So you do have some extra added perks though. So for those that really love the Mario Party 1, 2, and 3, I own Mario Party 2 and 3 personally, so I was able to pull a lot from that. It is a really good game for that. So it's kind of basically new, but remasters of a whole bunch of different content. So that was the only one that was like an iffy category out of all these games I was going through, but I figured it was still pretty solid for that fact alone. So I'm thinking I'm gonna stick that somewhere. I'll put it down at the bottom, or the bottom of A as it is right now. Next up, you had Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, the remakes of the Gen 4 games. Oh boy. Now this one right here, I have to say, like, come on, Nintendo. You could have done better with this one game in particular, or these couple of games in particular, though, 'cause I really do love myself some Pokemon Gen 4 games. However, these games right here was not it. I felt like these were, I don't know why the style of the games were chibi to begin with, though. But I digress, art style, whatever though. But there were two one-to-one and not enough changes or evolutions up within it though. I was expecting us to run around in the world kind of similar to Sword and Shield, at least, just with, the people running around like in a wild area. That's what I was expecting, and I wasn't expecting the one-to-one ratio, and you didn't have some of the elements that were really good within the platinum content, at least offering some kind of way. Yes, they did throw you a bone with some outfits and stuff. I was looking for a little bit more though. So this is one of those only games I'm gonna probably drop down to the D tier though. I mean, it might be technically the best way to play Diamond and Pearl if you hadn't already played it before, but if you're a veteran like me, man, go back and play Platinum. That's all I gotta say. Next up, Metroid Prime Remaster. There's not too much more to say about this thing though. It was literally one of the highest ranked games of last year because of the visuals and stuff like that. Like the art style of most GameCube games hold up to this day. And gosh, by golly, man, this one's a supreme game. So I have to drop that all the way up to the top of S tier though, because that's just a well beloved game. And visually, it just looks so impressive. Like you can even see the rainfall and stuff fall on the Samus's suit. Like the details on it is just freaking insane. All right, next up we had Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe. Now this game right here, oh well, you know what? Leave it to them. We always get a Kirby game almost every single year. It's probably the most consistent out of all of the Nintendo IP games out there, though. But this one right here, they did manage to actually go a little bit above and beyond and manage to have like a whole other extra little bit of content towards the very end of the game though. So it's like, hey, you were able to jump straight up into that or play the original game. This one's just based upon the Wii title though. So if you happen to be a Kirby fan, it's really solid. There's nothing really wrong with it though. So I'm gonna stick it right in the middle of B. Pretty solid though. Advance Wars 1+2 Reboot Camp. Well, I love the visualizations up in the game though. It looks really cool. I still need to get around to playing these games though. But man, oh man, I felt like they dropped the ball at least a little bit because of the fact that how, unfortunately, due to real world events, they just had to delay these games. It is really unfortunate, but I mean, I think they just kind of fumbled it because of that. So I will say that that's probably going to C tier. There's nothing necessarily really wrong about the games themselves, though. But I don't know. It just didn't really make the strong waves as what I feel like they potentially could have, because the quality of the game is still there. It's just in terms of comparison to everything else here in this list, though, it is a little bit behind all the rest. Then you have Pikmin 1 and 2. I think these are kind of go hand in hand though. Yes, these are remasters of the original GameCube games though. GameCube getting a lot of love, at least here on the Nintendo Switch, but we don't have a GameCube online service though. But they did manage to drop these out digitally on the eShops and then had a physical copy where you're able to buy both of these games though. I think both of them are pretty solid. I'll move them around like this. I'll drop them in the middle of B. Pretty solid right there. Super Mario RPG though. Now that game right there, I think, man, that game is truly something right there. At least whenever I was going through and playing through it, I was doing that. I'm still actually doing a stream series on my extras channel though. And at least with Super Mario RPG, man, the redone art style direction, I think is just a chef's kiss. The fact that they added in some extra challenging modes where you're able to go back and rebattle bosses that you previously beaten and stuff like that is really good. And I love those little scenes they managed to add it up in there, and the animations when you do some of these special moves. I mean, yes, that's how you do a Super Nintendo game and remake it, done right though. So I'll definitely, I'll probably put it right below remaster, but maybe above Skyward Sword. So really good right there. Another code, Recollection. Now, obviously, this is the remake, I would say, of the original titles that came out on the DS and the Wii era though. Now it's interesting because I think with that original DS copy, we had that over here, brought over here to like the North America region and stuff like that. However, that sequel that was only on Wii was actually exclusive to like the Japan region. Like we never really got that. So at least within this game, you actually, if you really love that first game in the series, though, you finally get that experience in second game. So that's a whole nother game they managed to add up in here. So I mean, for that aspect alone and the visuals and stuff, I think that's a really solid game. I'll probably put it at the top of. Oh, that one's tough. It could be the top of B or bottom in it. For the sake of this list, I'm gonna put it at the bottom of A. Really solid right there though. While yes, it's not gonna make some really exclusive waves in terms of like just drawing in attention though, but what it managed to do for that series alone, I think deserves that A spot because that's a whole nother game for a lot of different people. Never managed to play it because it just never released in their respective region. All right, now we're down to the last couple of games. Mario versus Donkey Kong. This was originally based upon the Game Boy Advance original title, and with this one, I just love it because of the art style and stuff. I think it just flashed a little bit more so with this Game Boy Advance copy. They did manage to actually put in extra levels that went a little bit over and beyond in comparison to the original titles with the Mario versus Donkey Kong game, though. So yeah, you got a little bit of extra challenges and stuff like that. You got these cool little cutscenes and stuff like that. While yes, the game isn't extremely long though, but I mean, hey, if you have a puzzle scratch an itch, I think it will do it for a lot of different people. So I'll probably put that one. I'll put it somewhere in the B, kind of close to the top though. And then last but certainly not least, you had Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door. Now this one right here checks off every single one of these boxes. Yes, it is a modern game. Finally, it's not stuck on the GameCube where it's priced over eBay like close to like $100 or so. So yes, there is ease of access in terms of that. They did manage to go through and redo the whole entire soundtrack. Now you got orchestrated tracks instead of like the original stuff, but you do have the option of actually going back and playing with the original music along with the redone music. They did manage to ease the traversal in the game in terms of like fast traveling points. You had different points or different you had different pipes in the game where it's able to actually where you're able to go into a certain room and be able to access all these different worlds with fairly good ease of access. And then on top of that, you're able to switch your partners real easily just by holding the L button and then switching and toggling stuff around though. So because of all of those modern day quality of life experiences up in there, obviously yes, graphically it does look a little bit better. I don't know why people almost try to butcher the game because it's 30 frames per second in comparison to the 60 frames per second that you got within the original game though. However, I still think for that aspect alone, I still think this one definitely holds up. So for that alone, I probably will put that maybe right above Super Mario RPG. All right, and that basically does it in terms of my tier ranking list of all the Nintendo first party games we managed to get on the Nintendo Switch that happen to be either remakes or remasters. There's a lot of good ones out there. I mean, even the ones that weren't necessarily too hot, such as the, Pokemon Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearls, though, they aren't necessarily bad games, but in comparison to everything else, I just had to put it on the bottom, though. So, yeah, really good list right there. So that about does it in terms of my overall discussion, along with my tier ranking list for all of these games that we managed to get on the Nintendo Switch console in terms of remakes and remasters. Unfortunately, Luigi's Mansion 2 wasn't able to make the list though, but as it stands now, that's the only future game that could have been potentially added on this list though. But yeah, that's going to basically do it for here though. But let me know down in the comment section down below, what all do you think about Nintendo's strategy in terms of how they handle their remakes and remasters? Have you came to that realization that yes, there are a bunch of younger audiences out there that are going to treat a lot of these remakes and remasters as brand new games, while for some of us older people out there, we recognize that yeah, it's a game that was originally on the Game Boy Advance, the GameCube, or even the Super Nintendo and stuff. So it's not really new to us, but for the vast majority of people out there that are giving Nintendo their dollars, I'm like, hey, those are essentially new games for all of them though. But yeah, that's gonna basically do it in terms of this video right here. So if you really like this, make sure you go and hit that like button, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and that bell to stay up to date on all things video game related I feel like talking about and discussing. So remember y'all, until our video I make next, see y'all.